Dr. Chow has had a successful clinical practice at Kaiser Permanente for over 2 decades. He was also involved in regional IT management, overseeing a number of operational systems, including enterprise email, reference databases, schedules, labs, radiology results, medications, and multiple other things across 60,000 providers and 60 sites. He led experimental projects such as KP's first PC interface for mainframes and created KP being Kaiser Permanente, first bulletin board forum for physicians. Yan has founded and advised a number of startups in the internet, healthcare technology sector, storage, and database spaces. In 2004, he was awarded 3 US patents for an ultra-fast network storage architecture. This sounds like the same as cardiac ablation did to Naveen. And has developed software to exploit very large databases, VLB processing 240-fold. He has been an author and invited speaker at multiple industry conferences. Yan earned his EAB with honors from Harvard, his MD from the University of California at San Diego, and in 2005 he received his MBA from the University of California at Berkeley's Haas School of Business. Welcome, Yan. I look forward to your presentation.
You know, it's a pleasure to be here. I just remember a story I read recently. Albert Einstein was teaching a class of students. You guys all know Albert Einstein. I don't have to explain. He was teaching a class of students, and it was a class where he handed out a quiz every week. So his assistant helped him to hand out this quiz. So one week, the assistant noticed something really strange. So she went to Dr. Einstein and said, you know, this week the quiz is the same as last week. And Einstein said, no problem. This week the answers are different. So I feel like that's what's happening in healthcare. Because the questions are the same. They've been the same for 30 years. But the answers are changing really fast. And so it's been a privilege for me to be part of Kaiser's really pretty visionary group to look at the future. That's what we do. We're part of IT, and I'm a pediatrician. So you better be careful you haven't got all your shots. I got my shots with me. But I've been with Kaiser for 30 years. 30 years. Last 5 years with this innovation group, I've been doing a lot of technology as a pediatrician, as Kaiser Permanente, and on my own. But this group is very unusual in healthcare. We actually look into the future to see what kind of technologies are going to come to healthcare in 2 to 5 years. And most healthcare organizations just don't do that. You know, technology has not been a differentiator for healthcare forever because of the nature of healthcare. Today it is. The spend on technology is so big that you cannot ignore it. It's become a strategic lever. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about, tonight I'm going to talk about an introduction to our group. Then I'm going to talk about some industry trends that we've been seeing. And I've looked at over 1,000 technologies in the last 5 years. Feel free to give me a call. And then I'll talk a little bit about the barriers and challenges that we've seen. And I just want to give you a snapshot of U.S. healthcare. I think you guys probably know these numbers pretty well. We are approaching a crisis stage, and in a very short time. And you know, it's not just us, it's also the world. There's rising demand from the baby boomers like myself. Reform is going to add probably, some people say, up to 40 million people to the healthcare demand. Including probably about 4 to 5 million to Kaiser. And we have 9 million people currently. Chronic illnesses are going to create a lot of demand for services. There's going to be rising costs, higher demand, and new regulations, and decreasing resources. And one of the most frightening statistics, which is little known, is that when you look at internal medicine training programs, and ask yourself, how many of those folks that finish the program end up in primary care? And the primary care physician is a physician you would think of as your doctor. Can you guess what percentage? 2%. 2%. Less than 2%. That's pretty amazing. That's scary. It means that when you get older and you need, you're a young crowd, so when you get old you need care, you may not be able to find a physician. So really, you know, sort of implies huge changes in healthcare. On top of that, we've had massive federal HIT involvement, healthcare information technology involvement with HIPAA, the Healthcare Reform Act, high-tech, meaningful use requirements, and then there's all these new care models that the government is trying to push, like ACOs, accountable care organizations that look a lot like Kaiser, bundle payments, health saving accounts, and then this huge transition from ICD-9 to ICD-10, which I don't know if you're familiar, but that's a coding scheme. There are 17,000 billing codes for ICD-9, and depending how you count it, 150,000 codes for ICD-10, and they don't map one-to-one. So it's going to be a huge headache. And on top of that, what we've seen is we've seen a lot of technology companies entering healthcare today at a rapid clip from domains that are very unusual, that never used to go into healthcare. We're seeing startups from biotech, from MEMS, nanotech, genomics, robotics, consumer electronics, even quantum computing, which is really something. A little bit about Kaiser Permanente. We are the largest private integrated care delivery system in the U.S. We have nearly 9 million patients, soon to be 13 million patients with healthcare reform, 15,000 physicians, or as we like to say, 15,000 CEOs. 167,000 employees, 36 medical centers, 533 medical offices, about 37 million visits a year. And we do a lot of research. We've actually done a lot of this study with the biobanks samples. We're doing that with UCSF. We've collected 170,000 samples of DNA, done a lot of studies. We have a $45 billion revenue, and the largest, most advanced EHR, electronic health record deployment in the United States, and PHR, patient health record, used by over 3.5 million patients on that screen. This, oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it'll be easy. We were started just in fall of 2006, so only 6 years ago now. Part of it IT, and we're one of the few groups at Kaiser that's multidisciplinary. We really have a three-part mission. The first is to innovate, which is we identify, we create innovation, we look at outside the company, we cultivate it inside, which is our next step. We have an innovation fund for technology that is actually an internal grant program, and any employee can apply for money. The only catch is they have to do the project within 6 to 12 months. So it's a very rapid cycle to prove or disprove an idea. We've had over 500 applications for that fund, about 60 granted, and about 14 going into production, which is pretty good. Of course, for the ones that didn't go into production, that's actually where we learn more, the failures. On the other side, the outside, we've seen, like I said, over 1,000 technologies. We've probably done deep dives into about 120 of interest, and about 10 of those have gone into production. So that's sort of the rates of how much innovation is happening. And finally, we have social networking tools and all kinds of communication tools to help innovators connect. Because I can't tell how many times I've talked to innovators that come to me and they kind of say in a hushed voice, like, I got this great idea. Nobody else has ever thought about this, It's just like you guys, you get the same message. And I've just heard 20 of the same pitch, 20. I'm going, you should connect with those guys. But we've also had a lot of media coverage because this is very unique in healthcare. So it's been a very unexpected and very welcome consequence of doing something different as an innovation, as a medical group. So our external experience, as I mentioned, we're having a lot of vendors who are approaching us now that we have a place for them to come to have us look at the technologies, and we don't charge for it. It's sort of a win-win situation, and we give feedback, enterprise feedback. We have a lot of interest from other healthcare organizations, like right now we're working with the Mayo Clinic. We've worked with UPMC and a couple of the other ones that are very, very innovative, and a lot of interest from universities and technology transfer, especially public universities like UC Berkeley, who really could use the money. So all these are very new models for Kaiser Permanente. And it's a learning situation for us. This is our Garfield Innovation Center. How many guys have been to the center? Okay, great. So some of you. We opened it in 2006 also. It's 37,000 square feet. It used to be a check processing warehouse. And it's fantastic. It's got a whole medical surgical ward built in, fully running, with the medical record running and everything, a test instance of the medical record. We have a full-scale operating room, labor delivery, newborn ICU, even a home environment where we look at telehealth. So very, very interesting. We've had a lot of conferences. Our Future Med was there this year, and if you were part of that, you could have seen it. We have a patient room in the future. We've had over 38,000 visitors from 41 countries. It's interesting, the healthcare problems are the same all over. You know, people are getting older, costs a lot, not enough doctors, and some of the innovations actually come from third world countries, which is very interesting, because they have to deal with shortage of, they don't have the resources, infrastructure. We've had the Health Minister of Denmark, Health Minister of Norway. We even had Anish Chopra was there a couple times. We've had recently the older brother of the President of France. I got to host him. I tried my French. And then he tried his broken English because he couldn't understand me. So this, you can see what we do here. There's an innovation space where we build space out of plywood and movable sinks and things like that, so they run scenarios before they build the final version, which you see the final version of the ward is there. It's a template ward for the new hospitals. That ward that you see, the paint, the furnishings, the lighting, everything is exactly like it's going to look like in a new hospital. It's all eco-friendly, it's all LEED certified. You see the clinic environment, that actually doesn't exist anymore. That's an old slide. We have a new clinic there now. There's a home environment. We call that our IKEA home. It used to be the 80s, now it's the 90s. We just built a KP Center for Total Health in Washington, literally 2 blocks from the Senate office building. And the reason is because Kaiser is a West Coast outfit. We're actually doing very well as a West Coast outfit, you know, but we don't have much influence in Washington. So they decided to, the CEO decided to build this unit. It's actually a functioning medical office, 5 floors, and right at the bottom is a showcase for Kaiser. So it's got a lot of technology. That's the world's biggest touchscreen, by the way, and that touchscreen faces the street, so you can't help to see when you drive by. All the center people, the staffers go by. We won a lot of awards for the medical record for various things, just because it's such a unique kind of effort. But let me go over some of the industry trends that we've seen in the last couple of years. Probably one thing is that, I don't know if you guys have seen, this is a Gartner hype cycle. So you guys, how many of you have seen it? Okay, some of you. What it is, it's a hype cycle. It's like the noise that you hear about technologies, what happens to that noise over time. In the first phase, you just start hearing about the technology. It's a trigger, so stuff starts going up in terms of hype. Then you get to the peak of inflated expectations. Inflated expectations, that's where the iPad is right now. And then you go over the peak, and then you come down to the trough of disillusionment. That's what Gartner calls it. That's where telehealth is right now. But it's a good place to be, because what's going to happen after that? You're going to start climbing the slope of enlightenment, and finally you enter the plateau of productivity. And even then, you're only 20 to 30% into the market. So it's actually a very interesting high curve, almost always true, but things move along this curve at different rates. You know? So probably the nearest term technology, or group of technologies we're looking at, is telehealth. And the reason we're looking at telehealth, many reasons. The current care model that we have, which is really a sick care model, is not sustainable, like I mentioned. There's not enough doctors, not enough nurses. The demand is going to be huge, and people are getting older and older and older. So that means that more and more people will have these chronic conditions. So the idea is with telehealth that you use a scalable care model that's based on self-service and rules-based automation. And you can deliver the care outside the clinic. So you can deliver it at home, or while you're traveling, or your work site. And then in terms of reimbursement, that will hopefully come. One of the biggest barriers to telehealth, to be honest, is that CMS, the Medicare, Medicaid, is not paying for it. So if they're not paying for it, the doctor's not going to do it. So it's pretty basic. Skill resources, I mentioned, is going to be team and rules-based care. One of the not really obvious implications of that is that when you use a team, instead of one doctor, because there's no doctor, use a team of people to take care of a patient, they all have to have access to the same information, which means they have to have the same medical record. And I think that's one of the things that's been holding back telehealth. The 3 models, basically, one is real-time video, which has been around for 20 years, 30 years. Doctor to patient, doctor to doctor. There's store and forward, which is you take a picture or a video and you send it like email, And then later on, at some point, somebody gets back to you with a diagnosis and recommendations. And finally, there's telemonitoring, which is usually done in the home or the workplace. You have the sensors, like the blood pressure cuff or the glucometer, pulse ox. The patient does it. He goes into a communication hub or aggregator of all kinds. It may include a video conferencing on the aggregator as well. And the data is sent to the care team, a call center, and then if there's an outlying value, you get the call back. There's pros and cons of each model, but today, those are the basic models for telehealth. Here are some of the hubs and sensors. I just want to show you a picture. It's pretty cool. The Intel Health Guide is the one at the lower right. That's the one with the picture. It looks like a video conferencing screen. It's a 2820. Anybody here from Intel? Okay, sorry. But when Intel came out with it, it was interesting because Intel is not a healthcare company, basically. It's a chip company. So the question is, why is Intel doing this? And I think Intel is not very different from a lot of companies trying to do this because they see the promise in healthcare, but they don't know what the answer is. What is their play in healthcare? And I think this is one attempt, and now it's part of Care Innovations, which is a Intel-GE collaboration. But this device, to Intel's credit, you see on the top there, it's basically a touchscreen PC with a webcam. At the top is a webcam. They did some ethnographic research which showed that people were worried that even when you turn the machine off, it could still watch you through a webcam. So you know what Intel did? They put a little plastic slider over it. So you see that's a human design. It's great. And then you see this Honeywell there. There's this Health Buddy, which is part of Bosch right now, this one right there, with the 4 buttons. 4 buttons, large type, large volume for elderly people, so they can use it. And then it's interesting, one of the newest ones is the one at the right lower side by Mobisante. It's a portable ultrasound that can be hooked into a mobile phone. And the interesting thing about that is that in the future, people think that the ultrasound will replace the stethoscope. So that's the hope. And very exciting. Here's some new sensor technologies. We have this in the Garfield Center, the upper right. It's the Kai Medical. It senses your vital signs at a distance. So you could be walking, 10 feet away, and the receptionist will know that you're too excited or not. Your heart rate, your respiration. The one in the top middle is a live core. Is invented by a cardiologist. We actually got to talk to him. It's an iPhone case that has 2 metal parts in it. So an iPhone case, you can hold it with 2 thumbs, or you can touch it on your chest, sends a live EKG to your doctor. Yeah, that's pretty cool, 1 lead EKG. The baby is wearing a suit of sensors. And this is another trend. This is a fabric sensor. And of course, the issue in pediatrics is the sudden infant death syndrome. The person on the lower left is lying on this bed on top of a mattress cover by this company called Hawana. And this mattress cover has sensing of vital signs using vibration. And so no wires, you just lie down on the bed, your vital signs come up, your heart rate, respiration, you get off the bed, it says get back in bed, that kind of stuff. Now that kind of stuff was a little bit too expensive for us, but you can imagine the evolution of this. It could be built into your car seat, into your sofa, into your bed. So you can monitor people, let's say in a smart home, who are elderly. You don't have to teach them how to put on this stuff, right? Which is fantastic. Medication adherence is a big issue. 79% of people don't take the medications the way the doctor thought they were taking them. And I have a story about that. I'm a pediatrician. So when I was a young doctor, I was actually, one of the most common things we do is treat ear infection. I don't know how many you guys have kids. Ear infection is probably one of the most common diseases you have. So you give medicine, they take it 3 times a day for 10 days, and they come back, get ear checked. So one time I gave this little girl amoxicillin, which is the world's most popular medicine. It's a pink bubblegum medicine. Every kid loves this. So they came back in 10 days, the ear was fine. So I asked the mom, how was the medicine? I expected to hear it was great. The kid loved it. She said it was really difficult to give it, really difficult. We had to hold her down. I said, oh, you had to hold her down. This child must really hate medicine of all kind. We had to get 3 people to hold down. I said, what'd you do? Well, we had to hold it so we could pour it in the ear. 3 times a day for 10 days. And it worked. That's the thing, you know, you expect people to, and you know, she didn't know, and she didn't talk to anybody who, so there you go, that's what you deal with, you know. But if you can't do the medication adherence at home, what hope do you have of doing any telehealth at home, right? So these are some of the devices that people have invented. There's all kinds of watches and devices to remind you, pill dispensers. The one on the upper right is interesting, the Senecare pill station. It actually takes a picture of all those wells, all those buckets, before and after you open the lid, so it can tell which pill you took. The latest three, the lower right, the pill, that's Proteus, the Proteus raisin. I don't know if you guys know that. That's a chip inside that pill, in every pill. It's a biodigestible chip. So you take the chip, you take the pill with the chip, it dissolves, and it sends out an electrical signal. You have a sensor on your skin, it picks up the signal, and it sends a message to your doctor, you took that pill. Now the other one, the MagnaTrace, is from, I think it's Georgia Tech, one of the universities down south. That is a magnet necklace, magnet sensor necklace. So the pills have magnets in them. So you take the pill and it goes between these sensors, and you can't fool it by taking the necklace off and go like this. You can't do that. So it goes down there, and then you send the picture and, you know, the signal. But then you're walking around with a stomach full of magnets. You know? So probably get stuck to fridges and stuff like that. I think the most interesting and probably the most feasible is this one down here, which is the Exhale Smart System. That's a system where they coat the pill with a molecule that when you take the pill, it releases the molecule, comes out in your breath, so you can measure it. And but you think about all these systems to try to figure out how people are taking pills or not taking pills. Really, the ultimate answer we want is, what is their blood level, right? We don't really care if they took it, they were reminded to take it, whatever. We really want to know what they have in their blood. And there are companies working on measuring those things through the skin, and that's going to be pretty awesome. Here, mobile health apps is another area that's very, very hot, besides telehealth. Mobile health apps, there's all kinds, you know, even an eye chart, which I think is very funny. You've got eye chart on a mobile phone. Pretty amazing. It's a 3D model of a heart. There's a lot of reminder systems, medication adherence systems, and you see over there is a live tracing, a fetal heart tracing live from a company called Airstrip, which has got a lot of publicity. Mobile apps we've done at Kaiser. We just released the electronic health record. You probably saw it in the paper, for Android first. Okay. iOS second, iOS through the web, where you can actually view part of the health record. You can do secure messaging with your physician, book appointments, see lab results, refills, and we even have a locator app and a Thrive app for walking. Here's another kind of mobile system. These are personal emergency response systems. These are systems for falls, you know, for emergencies. And it's interesting, in this market, we found that the adult children actually will pay for these things. You know, it doesn't have to be reimbursed by health plan. It's a huge issue. Falls in the elderly is a huge issue. The other thing I found interesting, I found in elderly people, in the UK and in Japan, they're really taking off on the iPad. They love the iPad. You go like this, you can make the thing bigger. That's a winner. I mean, it's amazing. So the form factor seems to be getting closer to what seniors might want to use. On the other hand, we have things like robots, and this is actually some pictures we had a robotics tech demo at the Garfield Center. The lower two pictures are from CNET. One is a wheelchair that has a robotic arm that you can control with the same control as a wheelchair control. You can pick up a drink and drink it, and that kind of thing. And of course, the other one is an exoskeleton for Berkeley Bionics. Exoskeleton is a harness. You know, this patient who's walking here actually is a paraplegic. So they put on the harness, and he stood up, and all of a sudden CNET and the Chronicle, all those guys are, how do you do that? And take a picture and everything. So the way it works is you have two canes. So when you lean towards a cane, your legs start moving in that direction. Very, very cool. But there are other systems that don't use canes. You also have companion robots, like the teddy bear from MIT, a teddy bear that watches you to see if you took your pill. And then we have this baby seal called Paro, which you can see this elderly gentleman holding. And it's been found to really help people with anxiety, depression, especially when they're lonely, you know, when they get older. Just that fuzzy, you know. Paro, we had him in the Garfield Center. You walk by him, he'll look at you and he'll follow you. And then when you stroke him, he purrs. You know, it's really no maintenance, but expensive to buy, $6,000. Speech and gesture-based interfaces. We're very interested in those kind of things because they portend a new way to interact with computers. You see the Kinect, those guys all driving and stuff in the Kinect. There's the Nintendo Wii. And you see in the right upper corner, that's a Wii casualty. That's a woman who got whacked by her Wii. So it's a dangerous sport. There's an Intel digital reader, which is kind of a cool device. It's right upper corner. It's a device you can hold over printed text and it'll read it out loud. So it's not a big stretch to go from that to translation, right? So it's text to recognize text to translated text to speech. And you think about that, how cool would it be to have a device that you could point at a sign and tell you what the sign says in your language? Other things is a Kinect down bottom controlling the Windows 7. And this guy at NASA is really interesting. He has these leads under his throat, and he's actually doing speech recognition through the nerve signals that are coming to his throat. The idea is that in a very noisy environment, you can still hear what he's saying. Right? Very, very cool, very interesting. Subvocal, it's called subvocal speech recognition. Here's augmented virtual reality. I'm sure you guys know this. I saw this at CES 2 years ago. Here's a lady who's doing who has a cardboard thing. She's looking at through these augmented reality glasses. There's nothing on the board. She's going like this, and this is what you see on the board is this game with the ball rolling around. So she's going like this, you know, with this. It's all sort of in augmented reality. Now there's a medical application. Here's a patient in the University of Washington in their burn unit getting their hand worked on. And on the left hand, the right hand is playing a video game. And you know, the video game he's playing is called Snow World. Snow World is a world of very cold snow and ice. So he's feeling like I'm numb. I'm numb, I can't feel anything. That's virtual reality anesthesia. That's pretty cool. No side effects. Until later. Forterra is the company we work with on the right upper side. We actually created an entire Kaiser hospital online, virtual. And we were able to train nurses, you know, multi-user, real-time, in scenarios that would have been very difficult to mimic in reality. A lot more expensive to mimic also. And it was very good. The retention rate was very good for that way of training. And then, of course, down below we see a woman trying on dresses, but not really. So they're putting different dresses in front of her, in front of the body. And finally, here's an app that's actually called the Word Lens, which you may have read about. It's an iPhone app. It's, you got the iPhone with the camera, right? You point it at a traffic sign. The one on the right is the real one, and the one on the left is the one in Spanish that you see on your screen. That's very cool. Can you imagine an elderly patient looking at the barcode on the pill bottle and connecting to a medical record and telling you, oh yeah, you know, this one's out of date, you should replace it, or you're not supposed to be taking this anymore. That will help a lot, you know, as far as augmented reality at the point of need. And this is part of the farthest out. This is sort of, you know, I used to think that I knew what science fiction was. No, today, I don't know what science fiction. The only thing I think still is science fiction is time travel. I haven't seen that yet, but it's getting close with quantum computing. So here's an implant that you put into your arm, where you don't even have to reach for your remote control. You can do if you're a real couch potato, you can just go change channels. This game I saw up here, it's from Mattel. It's $79. Uses your EEG, the theta waves in EEG, to control this ball up and down with a fan speed to maneuver it through an obstacle course. So there's a brain interface, brain control interface. And down below that you see a headgear from a company called Emotive that actually is about $300 or $400 that you can actually use it to control video games. And finally, on the left lower side is this chip that you can actually stick onto people that has a coiled circuitry that can measure activity level, location, you know, has wireless connection and everything. Would be great for somebody with Alzheimer, you know, when they wander, that kind of thing. And finally, there's a Wired magazine cover, a very famous one, on a brain implant, a visual cortex implant, where they had a person that was blind, put in an electrode into the visual cortex, and they could see, and not perfectly, but they could see things. Very, very amazing. So it brings up the issue, of human 2.0. Is that possible? Is that ethical? Is that even legal? Other trends, to finish up, we've seen a lot of companies, the big companies starting to look at smart TVs, the integration of internet and TV and entertainment and everything else, appliances, homes, and vehicles. Ubiquitous sensors, the Internet of Things. We have 7 billion people on the planet. There are 35 billion devices connected to the internet. Big data, that's a group I'm working in today. It's big data, unstructured data, the issue of how do you get meaning out of data. Analytics, decision support, clinical gaming, as I mentioned, social media. Web 3.0, I just saw 3D prosthetic printing, creating prosthesis out of it's like the desktop publishing thing, but you're creating things. But there are barriers and challenges. Probably one of the first that doctors will always present you with when you have a new technology is what is the evidence? And the evidence to them means 5 to 7 years of randomized clinical trials, double-blind, controlled, everything else. RCT is what they call it. But the problem with that, of course, is that the pace of technology is too fast. 5 to 7 years, by the time you finish your trial, your technology is obsolete. I just saw an article recently on how telemonitoring was not shown to be very effective, and what they were using was interactive voice response, self-reported, which is crazy. We have devices today. So I think we have to use a different paradigm, and that's partly the barrier, is you have to convince doctors and medical societies that most of what we do in medicine is not evidence-based medicine, even though Kaiser loves evidence-based medicine, but the patients that you take care of never look like the ones in the trials. They're never that perfect. They have 5 diseases, They'll never qualify for the trial. So you have to practice by anecdote anyway, right? By your own data from your own experience. So now we're saying, okay, we're collecting all this data. Can we practice data-driven medicine instead of evidence-based medicine? And that's a huge difference. That's a huge change in the paradigm. But you got to convince the doctors. Standard of practice, of course, if it doesn't become standard of practice, it's very hard to do it. Of course, there'll always be doctors doing it, but it's going to be a risk. What is the business model? Very, very important. Like I mentioned, telehealth, CMS is not paying for it right now. But if they paid for it, like tomorrow, the next day everybody would be doing it. I mean, that's just the same. You talk about evidence and this, but practically speaking, who's paying for it? I think at some point we will have to, because we're going to run out of doctors, we're going to run out of hospitals. So at some point we'll have to do it. But the question is, are we going to be doing it thoughtfully or just kicking and screaming? Workflow issues, metrics, what do we measure? We have no idea. Nobody has an agreement on what is success in all these technologies. For Kaiser, of course, integration with all our legacy systems, scalability is an issue, reimbursement, as I mentioned, regulation. There's no case law, no legal precedent, risky. It's interesting. You hear a lot about patient-driven healthcare, patient empowerment. It's all well and great if it goes well. The flip side of that, which people never discuss, is what is the patient's willingness to take responsibility for those decisions, the accountability. If they're not willing to take accountability, the doctor will never give up responsibility, right? It's too much risk. So I think that it requires actually a very deep change in the perspective on healthcare from both the provider and patient side. And of course, there's legal risks, which we all know about, and ethics. So I think there are a lot of changes happening in healthcare right now. There's almost a perfect storm of pressures. It's much more happening than I've ever seen in 30 years. But it's really too soon to tell what's going to happen with where we go with technology. All I know is that there is huge interest, even from the venture capitalists I've talked with, that they're starting to feel like health IT should be an area they should be looking at, although it's still very cautious. But I have seen a lot of investment in analytics and big data, and some of those things we have very near-term return. The other stuff, very speculative, but I would say that eventually we will have a new model of care, and it will be very technology-driven. So thanks for listening.
So last but obviously not the least speaker is a visitor from Johns Hopkins University, Dr. Yusuf Yazdi, who is with the Department of Biomedical Engineering and is the Executive Director for CBID, which is the Center for Biomedical Innovation and Design. He will speak about how CBID is leading efforts in developing novel diagnostic and therapeutic medical devices with applicability globally across the world. Yusuf joined the Department of Biomedical Engineering in 2009 as Executive Director of CBID and Assistant Professor. Yusuf is a graduate of Rice University with a degree in Electrical and Computer Engineering and has MS and PhD degrees in Biomedical Engineering from University of Texas at Austin. He also received his MBA from a great school called Wharton, which I happen to be an alum of, in entrepreneurial management. And before arriving at Hopkins, Yusuf was Corporate Director in Johnson & Johnson's Corporate Office of Science and Technology in New Jersey. At J&J, Yusuf was responsible for the creation and management of external and internal partnerships that funded and guided early-stage healthcare innovation. In this role, he made significant contributions to corporate-wide teams that defined the company's entry into major new businesses. Yusuf has 17 years of medical industry experience as a fellow of American Institute for Medical and Biological Engineering and serves on advisory board of several major academic and public organizations. Yusuf. And just a time check here, I know we have a stop at 9, but we may be running a little bit late, so I appreciate your patience if you guys can hold on for 5-10 extra minutes.
Thank you very much for the invitation. This has been a very informative evening for me. I've learned a lot from the talks. I just bought over the holiday, I bought the Xbox daughters. So I really appreciate the picture of the lady with the bruise on her eye. Having a 230-pound guy dancing, to Lady Gaga with a 100-pound, 13-year-old is not a safe activity. You get into the music and you start moving around. But I can tell you, in terms of health, I'll never complain about my kids playing video games all day because they're just constantly on the move in front of that machine. It's just amazing technology. And I feel like after playing, growing up with Nintendo and all these other games, watching my older kids play with that, it really made them extremely sedentary. The new technology finally caught up and makes them extremely active. So it's amazing change. So I've learned a lot, so thank you, Muda, very much for the invitation. So I'm going to talk about innovation in an academic environment. And when I was at COSAT, we spent a lot of time scouting for technologies in universities. And I can say that, in all honesty, 90% of the time, what's going on in university and in the academic environment in terms of innovation is irrelevant to commercialization, because it's not designed for commercialization. It was really driven by a person's desire to get tenure and to publish and to maybe get a Nobel Prize, but not to commercialize the technology. So what we've done here at CBID, and what attracted me to this program 2 years ago at Hopkins, is that it really stands that model completely on its head. And I think you'll see that in the way the program's been designed. So I have 4 logos on the screen here. One is our center itself. And then the center is an element within the Department of Biomedical Engineering. And one of the beauties of this department is that it has equal footing in the School of Medicine and the School of Engineering. And as you know, in medtech, that's critical. You have to have engineers and clinicians working side by side in order to really solve a problem correctly. So I have 3 roles described here. I was telling Mudit that in academia now I understand why things are so cheap, because they hire you to do one job and then they ask you to do 3 jobs. So which one do I push, I guess? There you go, okay. Just a keyboard here. Okay. So the CBID has 2 essential missions, and believe it or not, this mission statement was somewhat controversial. So when I came from a corporate environment, as Mudit said, so I've been at Hopkins for 2 years, so I'm a junior. I guess I'll have to start looking for a job next year. I'll be a senior. But
But one of the first things I did was to create a mission statement to make sure we're on the same page as to what we're all about. And this was very controversial because people said, we're a university, we're about education. But what we did in this mission statement is make it very clear to everybody and ourselves that we're about two things. We're about education, and we take it very seriously that we're educating and developing the next generation of leaders in medtech innovation. But we're also about the innovations that they produce. And they have to be things that have a transformational impact and are economically viable. And that's our two criteria. We will not let our students work on projects unless they have a significant impact on people's lives and that they have a significant commercial potential. There's plenty of people doing one or the other, but we're about both. And the reason why the two can happen simultaneously is because it is our firm conviction that you learn best when you're working on a real-world project and with real doctors, with real big egos, and they really are difficult to work with. And that's where kids really learn this stuff. And the metric of my success and the metric of the center's success is really what is the impact that these innovations and these students are having on healthcare globally. So as I said, we really bring together two of critical elements to success. Johns Hopkins Medicine is recognized. This slide is already outdated. It says 19 years in a row, the #1 hospital in America. Now it's 21 years. You can tell this slide's 2 years old. The best hospital in the nation, and also the Department of Biomedical Engineering is the #1 Department of Biomedical Engineering in the nation. And it's really a privilege for me to work with them. These are the raw materials. It's not sufficient, as I said, because the mindset is totally different than what we're trying to accomplish within our center. So having these two elements are important, but you also need to bring in a wide range, a network of outside partners to make this a success. So what we've created is this network that includes fantastic early stage medtech investors like Synergy Life Science Partners and and minor players like NEA and Aberdare, and then we also have big companies like J&J and BD who are sponsoring our programs, and government partners like the FDA. We're about 45 minutes away from White Oak, where the FDA's new campus is, and we have a lot of alumni from Hopkins who work there, and they come up to the campus to teach our regulatory affairs class over the summer, and we send students down there to get free reviews of their projects. Also, law firms in town, they all contribute to this ecosystem that we've created in the Baltimore, Washington area for medtech innovation. I think what we've created here is a pipeline of high potential, both medtech leaders and innovations. So I have on the slide here two of my least favorite phrases. The first is the phrase bench to bedside. So when I was a PhD student in our lab at Austin, UT Austin, we were experts in biophotonics, the use of light to diagnose or treat disease, ablate tissue, characterize tissue. And I was interested in cancer diagnostics, and my advisor said, Yusuf, you can work on whatever the hell you want to work on, excuse my language, as long as it ends up with biophotonics as being the solution. and we were doing cervical cancer diagnostics, so we were looking for a replacement for the Pap smear. So the Pap smear is a test which has been attributed to saving lives and reducing cervical cancer from #1 killer of women in the developed world down to number like 8 or 9. But it's a very inaccurate test. On the surface, the test is almost random. It's like 60–70% sensitivity and specificity. It's not that good overall. So we thought we can do better than that. So I made this very expensive optical spectroscopy system that requires 2 grad students to run, and a probe, which is like a millimeter, like 2 centimeters in diameter, that sits on the cervix to measure this optical spectrum. And it was a wonderful technology, and it worked much better than the Pap smear. And in fact, someone from Brad Vail from JJDC came down to UT Austin when I was a grad student and invested and helped to create a company called Lifespecs, and it spun out as a company, and the company died, I think, a very appropriate death because it's a very inelegant solution, basically. It was pushing the technology onto the problem. And it's very hard to find a technology and a solution where you can say, somehow this technology can do something about that solution. The problem is that technology the best solution to that problem? That's where academia falters. Our center is all about starting from the bedside, understanding exquisitely the medical problem you're trying to solve, and then going to the bench and finding the best technology that can solve that problem. And then iteratively coming back to the bedside so that you make sure that your product development stays very relevant to the commercial environment. This is something I picked up at J&J. My first week at Ethicon Endosurgery, they said you have to go down to the surgery, you have to be in surgery, you have to watch the surgeries, you have to know the clinicians, because that's where the inspiration comes from. The second term I really dislike is tech transfer. You know, in electrical engineering, it's axiomatic. When something fails, it's usually in the interconnection between two components. Components themselves rarely fail. It's the interconnection, usually the plug, the gap, that's where things fail. And the same thing happens in product development. When you go from advanced R&D to R&D, a lot fails there. When you go from R&D to manufacturing, things fail. Manufacturing to sales and marketing, things fail. What we try to do is have all of those partners in place, as I showed in that network that we've created, early on in the process. So traditionally, someone in a lab would spend 20 years developing some new microfluidic chip, and then they'd do a couple of patents, they'd send it to the tech transfer office, and the tech transfer office would try to shill it to somebody to purchase or invest in or form a company around. What we do at CIBIT is we bring in people like Mudit, and we're very happy to have him as a contributor in terms of advising our teams. Early on in the process, say, is this a problem even worth going after? Early on in the process. And likewise, in our Global Health Innovation Program, which I'll talk about later on, we bring in manufacturing partners and legal partners, etc. All the key stakeholder perspectives are present early on and throughout the process. So we follow the three-stage process, which has been described very eloquently by Stanford Biodesign folks. So we copied this shamelessly from them, and we're very happy to have Paul Yock as a major contributor to the design of this program, and he's been very open and collegial in that regard. And we've repaid the favor by helping many other universities do the same, and I can tell you, on a weekly basis, I get emails by other universities saying, we want to create a CIBIT-like program in our university, and so the competition is growing. The first stage is identify. And, you know, this is the unsung hero of innovation, is picking the right problem to solve. And as engineers, we're really not trained to do this well. We're trained to be handed instructions and said, I need a gadget that weighs this much and costs this much, and you know, it requires this much power and to do this functionality, and go and build it, and we're really good at building it. What we're less good at is identifying the right problem to solve. So we devote a lot of time to this. In our master's program, students spend the entire 3 months of the summer doing clinical rotations. 2 months of that happens at Hopkins Medicine, and then 1 month of it happens at low-resource hospitals in other countries. Out of that effort, they come up with hundreds of ideas for potential projects. And they do an initial assessment of the potential, commercial potential for that. And because they are engineers, they also have some intuition as to whether this is feasible or not. They don't yet focus on the problem. In fact, at this stage, we ask them to remain aloof as to what technology domain the solution will come from. At this stage, we just want to make sure they're working on a problem that's worthy of their time. That's the key. So they go through these clinical rotations. These are the kind of rotations they go through in the master's program at Hopkins. I can tell you it's a wonderful curriculum. There's a business curriculum. We have a mini MBA, the parts of the MBA that are absolutely essential for medtech innovation, minus the parts that Mudit and I learned that get people in a lot of trouble, like complex derivatives, etc. So I think this is actually superior. And the evidence for that is that we beat all the Wharton MBAs, and we won first place, one of our teams did, in the Wharton Business Plan competition. we won't feel bad about it, because that was the first year we did it. The students won first place at Wharton. The second year, they won first place at Harvard Business School. So I think the reason is that they're doing really well on the business curriculum, plus they're working on really exciting projects. So when you go in front of a panel of judges in the business plan competition, you're comparing your anti-gravity machine to something that'll save lives. It has a big effect. So we go through this filtering process, and the filtering process involves all three critical perspectives. The technical, clinical, and business perspectives are brought to bear. The technical, as I said, they don't have a solution yet, but they do bring their intuition to play. So by the end of the process in September, they have one project per team. So already the projects that are being selected in the CIBID pipeline of medtech projects are projects that are heavily vetted. So a project is selected, a team is commissioned, and the team is made up of students, and the clinician is considered an integral part of the team. It's not that you go to and ask a clinician, what do you want me to solve, and then they say, oh, I need a gadget to do this, and then you go off and do it, and then you come back to them. The clinician is part and parcel of the team. We're very disappointed whenever we see an invention disclosure that doesn't include the clinical partner on the invention disclosure. It's really important that they participate. And then including the faculty as well. And then we surround that core team with all of the expertise and resources they need to succeed. We have a technology acceleration fund that's been generously funded by J&J. Very thankful to that, and